Greetings theists and non-theists, I am the Atheist Paladin. I want to do this video outside, but thought it was going to be a nice day, but it looks like it wants to kind of rain on me. So, despite my extensive notes, I may have to make this quick as I possibly can. But as I know, the whole thing about Sye Ten Bruggencate and presuppositional apologetics, I know that's been going around. But I've been saying a few things that hasn't been said, so I think there's a few things I can include into this debate. But the whole thing is that he starts off, his sort of argument starts off, that it would be intellectually honest to admit that God would be able to reveal, basically reveal truth in such a way that he can have absolute knowledge of it. And to that, I would say, no, I don't agree. I don't agree to that whatsoever. I don't think it is intellectually honest, and I think he actually uses that phrase in order to say, if you somehow would disagree with this, then you're not being intellectually honest. But that's simply not the case. There is nothing that is self-evident in this argument that would actually lead us to this case. The only thing, and I say this because the only thing that you can know with absolute certainty is self-evident truth. Because you can't refute or deny self-evident truth without actually using self-evident truth in the process. And this is why you can know self-evident truth in that way and know it absolutely. But beyond that, there are no other circumstances that can lend to that, and to this effect, he's actually confusing absolute knowledge with being absolutely certain. Yeah, God can reveal, quote-unquote, things to you in such a way that you can be absolutely certain, but you're mistaking certainty as knowledge. While they may correlate in many circumstances, they don't always correlate 100%. So certainty does not equal knowledge. And this is what comes down to it. He asks atheists to explain logic, basically in the transcendental argument for God, is that atheists have to explain logic and that they cannot have absolute knowledge because of this argument. Well, to a certain extent, I would agree we cannot have absolute knowledge beyond, of course, the situation I described in self-evident truth. The argument does not show that that logic or any other the things that he brings up is absolutely necessarily to be explained. It's not necessary to explain logic. And so the problem that I have with this is that he proposes revelation as a means of knowledge, but the problem is that there's no shortage of people who claim that they have revelational knowledge from God. Muhammad, he said he had visions and revelations from God. Joseph Smith says he had revelations from God. Every religion claims that they have a revelation from God. So this proposes a huge problem. You know, God reveals truth to everyone on a universal level, as claimed by the Christians through the scriptures of Romans. And yet somehow Christianity still seems to be a geographical phenomenon. This has absolutely no explanatory power at all. So you're saying that God has revealed to every atheist and every unbeliever of every sort of stripe, including of other religions, so that on Judgment Day that they say, well, your arguments weren't convincing. Sye would say, well, no, you won't have that argument because God is going to reveal the truth to everyone before that. But that sort of brings several more problems into it, but I'll continue on with this later. But the main crux of the argument is that either logic is either contingent, in other words, it needs to be explained, or necessary. And the entire argument fails to show that logic is actually contingent on anything. And I would actually argue that you cannot deny logic as a necessary truth, that it is self-evident. And the argument goes as follows. If logic needs an explanation, then it is possible to be illogical. So if there's a possibility of logic, then there is no reason I should actually accept that argument. So if logic is contingent, then there's a possibility of illogic. So there's absolutely no reason that I actually should accept the contingent argument. So if logic is necessary, then it is self-evident, because something that is necessary and requires an explanation is a contradiction in the terms, is a square circle. This is a true economy. So if it is necessary, then it's self-evident, and then therefore the tag argument, in order to explain logic, is completely unnecessary. So, and this is a true economy. They can't get a way around it. And this is sort of like the whole Euphoia's dilemma, but except with logic. The thing that what happens is as with Euphoia's dilemma, they try to split this true dichotomy, to split the horns, with saying the same thing what they say about God's morality. It's a part of God's nature. The problem with this is that, again, this is a true economy. You can't split the horns. Either logic is necessary or logic is contingent. So again, it breaks down into either God's nature is contingent upon something, which is inconsistent with the very notion of God having a contingent nature, because that would cause God to be needing an explanation himself, or logic is necessary. But again, if a logic is necessary, it needs no explanation. And if you even were somehow to buy this, it only breaks it down to a meaningless tautology. If logic is God's nature, that tells us nothing about God. It tells us nothing about logic, because then you'll have to still figure out the nature of logic, which you can't do because you don't know what God is, and you don't know what the supernatural is. So using that as an explanation is sort of, it's incoherent. It says nothing at all. But if I say logic is self-evident, then we know why A is A, and the law of non-contradiction is true, and then we know why the excluded middle is true, and we know why what the third law is. So, identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. We know all why that's true, and it's perfectly explained by its self-evident nature. But we don't know why we should accept it if it's contingent, and that somehow God's nature explains this. There's no explanation at all. It lacks complete informational context. There's no context whatsoever to it. So we have morality and ethics. Again, he sort of asserts there is absolute morality, as if there's absolute knowledge. There's no such thing. Morality and ethics is at its core, judging our actions. It is a judgment of our actions. So as a result, it is not anything objective or independent of people and human beings. So if you eliminate people and human beings, if morality was to be absolute, it would still exist, but it does not. It does not work in that fashion. Now, if you would divorce ethics from rational thought and empathy, you wouldn't have morality at all. It would be completely lame. Everything that we say is evil or good is based on basically those two core criteria. And morality does have an intuitive sense that even sociopaths understand the nature of ethics and morality, and they understood the rules of morality. But the thing that they lack is, being sociopaths, they lack empathy. So that's why we need both parts. We need rationality as sort of a framework, and empathy as sort of the coal for the fire, for to power the whole machination. So if Sye can come up with something that is neither rationally based or neither based on empathy, and make an moral argument for it, then all he has done is really discovered another way to have moral and ethics, or another hidden value to which I have not considered. But this does not prove that God is a necessary factor in proving, and for morality, to proving that morality exists. Again, because we're both rational beings and we're also both empathetic beings, both of these are grounded in the core in our nature. We don't need God's nature or God's dictates in order to explain why we are the way we are and why certain actions are destructive to our society or to our individuality, and why others promote that. Now we go on to the laws of physics. Well, the laws of physics are obviously grounded in logic. There is no illogical law of physics. So again, we have something that is grounded other and outside of God, and is also can be explained by current theories of physics, such as M theory and string theory and what have you. Now, the thing I wanted to come back to is that the whole argument sort of cruxes on, again, that everybody has the capacity to believe in God, and that God reveals it in such a way that we can know it regardless of evidence, basically, regardless of evidence. And knowledge or conviction without evidence is kind of stupid to me. But the thing that it assumes is that we have what is called direct dodastic control of our beliefs in this particular issue. Well, direct dodastic control is, by and large, rejected by this philosophical community. So the very underpinning of this whole argument requires to believe in something that is yet have to be any foundation in. And even if we can say that we have direct control over what we believe, we still, there's the ethical layer of believing that you cannot believe in something to which you have insufficient grounds or evidence for, because we understand the consequences as put forward in the morality of ethic, or the ethics of belief, that we all have a responsibility to find out to the extent that we can about certain things before we can believe them. So in order to have the certainty, you still have to have the evidence and the grounding and the reasoning behind it before you can be justified in that belief. Ignorance, again, as even in the Bible, is not an excuse. So to say, well, you could be completely ignorant of God, completely ignorant of all the actual arguments that would lead you to believe in God, and still be accountable for not believing in God. This is utterly stupid. So, and yes, this is the argument that is now presented as sort of the last stand of most theists. They cannot present any evidential reason, so they say we'll give up on the evidential side and simply assume that God can reveal knowledge, even though that's not knowledge. So, God can give you a set of facts that you can memorize and have the feeling of certainty. But if you cannot prove or demonstrate, you don't have knowledge. So we're back at the beginning of everything that which Sye asserts as possible is not. And so the whole argument falls apart. Alright, thank you for watching, if you watched the whole thing. And remember, rationality is the path of righteousness.